Mitch Albom's story of his friendship with a dying professor, Tuesdays with Morrie, has become the most successful memoir ever published. His latest book, Have a Little Faith, is all about a couple of other unexpected friendships, and Mitch is with us live in the studio. Great to see you.
I see you.
I've been watching this roll out for a couple of weeks now and hearing some of the stories about what's happening in the book, and I finally got my hands on the book this week. And one of the things that struck me more than anything else, it was like life was preparing you to be a rabbi. Was it not?
You're being too kind, but life is full of surprises, and Tuesdays with Morrie was like that, you know, as it came out of the blue. And this did too. 9 years ago, I went back to the little town where I grew up, and the rabbi I'd known my whole life there pulled me aside and said, I'd like to ask you a favor. He was 82. I said, okay. He said, I'd like you to do the eulogy at my funeral.
Right.
And I was not prepared for that. I hadn't been religious in a long time, and who was I to do
you? You had grown
eulogy?
up in this congregation. You had been bar mitzvahed there. I mean, you were plugged in. You could read the Torah. Yeah. You knew what was up
as
there.
a young man.
Yes.
And then I walked away from it, like a lot of other people, because I was doing well, I was healthy, and I figured God can go His way, and I'll go mine, and I'll be fine. And for about 20-year period, really didn't have a whole lot to do with it until this very unusual request.
Right. So because you're dutiful, you say, well, I've got to get to know you better if I'm going to do this. And the next thing you know, this whole other relationship forms.
Right. I thought it would be a few weeks. It ended up being 8 years. He lived till he was 90, and we ended up talking about every kind of thing. I learned all sorts of things about him and life behind the pulpit and behind the robes, and theories about important things in life. We talked about happiness, for example. I remember I was in a hospital with him, and I said, well, okay, do we know what the secret of happiness is? He says, yes. I said, are you going to tell me? He said, be satisfied. That's it. Be grateful. That's it. For all you have and all God has given you. I said, that's it. That's it. Now, that took about, 15 seconds? And I haven't stopped thinking about that ever since I heard it. And it was just a series of those kind of lessons.
In the meantime, at your adopted hometown of Detroit, you start doing some volunteer work and get to know this pastor in a completely different congregation.
Right.
A guy who works with the homeless in a building that's falling apart over your heads. What was that journey like?
Well, totally different. He was African-American Christian. He'd been a criminal, a thief, a drug addict, and turned his life over one night when he thought he was going to be murdered by his drug dealers. And now he ministers to the homeless and the poor with a church with a giant hole in its roof where it literally snows into the church. When I first met him, I didn't trust him, to be honest, because we don't tend to trust what we don't know, especially when it comes to faith. But because I had been getting to know the rabbi off the pulpit, I said, well, let me try that with him. And I found this whole other world of this guy who was feeding the poor and taking care of the neediest of citizens.
A portion of the proceeds from this book go to help put the roof back on the church there, and that really starts in earnest on Monday, I understand.
Yeah, we're going to start to plug, thanks to donations from around the world, we're going to plug that hole up before Christmas.
And Mitch, all things sort of run together sometimes, how they tie together so interestingly. Oprah announces her leaving her talk show. She produced 2 of your movies.
Yes, she did.
Yeah.
She did a great job. She was a joy to work with, and she does good work and does good things. And it's hard to get famous for doing those 2 things in America, and she has. So my hat's off to her.
You write books that people really, really gravitate to, and this is another one, and we're so happy that you took the time to stop by to say hello.
Thank you, Harry. Good to see you as always.
Appreciate it. All right, maybe you're a Rebbe to a lot of people. You can read an excerpt from Have a Little Faith on our website, earlyshow.cbsnews.com.